Welcome to Twilight Tale. Tonight, we're exploring a quiet corner of history, a time before ticking clocks, buzzing alarms, or glowing screens. This is a story about how ancient people measured time, not with seconds and minutes, but with shadows, stars, water, and patience. There are no battles here, no heroes rushing toward destiny, only slow days, long nights, and the gentle human habit of noticing the sky. You don't need to remember anything. You don't need to stay awake. Let the past unfold at its own unhurried pace as we begin tonight's story. The first light of dawn touches the earth, soft as a whispered prayer, bathing the world in a gentle glow. The ancients rise, not to the sharp cry of an alarm, but to a far more sacred call, the silence of the sun, the quiet unfolding of its light across the horizon. In this timeless place, the desert holds its breath, and all is still, save for the faint rustle of wind against sand. The sun, slow and deliberate, makes its entrance, its rays spilling over the earth like a golden thread, weaving moments together. Here, at the edge of this vast golden sea of sand, we find the first measure of time, not through the ticking of hands or the clanging of bells, but through the shadows that stretch long across the land. The ancients, those who walked this earth long before our clocks were born, learned to read the sun, not by its heat or light alone, but by the way its shadow fell, softly, rhythmically. A shadow marks the beginning of time, and from the moment the sun's rays touched the earth, the dance between light and dark began. We move slowly through this ancient desert, the wind stirring the sands around us like the turning of pages in an old book. In the distance, the jagged silhouette of an ancient temple rises from the earth, its stones worn and time-worn, yet steadfast in their silent guardianship of a forgotten knowledge. The temple, though crumbled in places, remains perfectly aligned with the rising sun. Its entrance, once grand, now stands open to the sky, a gateway between the heavens and the earth. In the temple's shadow, beneath the crumbling columns, lie the remnants of an ancient sundial, its stone face etched with careful markings, each one a precise record of the passing hours. It is said that the ancients, long before the mechanical clock, measured their days not by the numbers on a dial, but by the way the shadow fell upon these markings, slowly shifting as the sun moved across the sky. These stones, placed with reverence, held more than just time. They held the pulse of the earth itself. The sundial, in its simplicity, is a testament to the wisdom of those who lived before us. With no hands to move, it relied solely on the movement of the heavens, the slow arc of the sun, and the delicate play of light and shadow. Each day they gathered here, watching as the shadow lengthened in the morning and shrank in the afternoon, tracing the cycle of the sun as it journeyed across the sky. Through this quiet observation, they began to measure time, not as an abstract concept, but as something to be felt in the body, something to be experienced in the stillness of the earth and the rise of the sun. As we wander deeper into this sacred space, the sun's light grows stronger, casting long shadows that stretch across the desert floor. We find ourselves at the edge of an ancient stone circle, where the stones stand in silent witness to the passage of time. These circles, much like the sundials, were designed with an almost mystical precision. The ancients built them not just to honor the gods, but to align themselves with the very rhythm of the earth, to mark the seasons and the solstices, to measure the time between planting and harvest. We pause here, beneath the weight of these stones, feeling the sacred stillness that surrounds us. The desert, with its endless horizon, seems to stretch into eternity, and yet, in the soft rustling of the wind, in the quiet creak of stone against stone, we hear a voice, faint but present, whispers from those who once stood here, watching the sun, learning its language. Here, time was not a thing to be controlled, but something to be watched, to be understood. It was not measured in hours, but in the spaces between the shadows. It was felt in the slow arc of the sun, in the way the earth tilted and turned with each passing day. We look again at the sundial, the marks upon its face now softened by the warmth of the sun's light. The shadows have begun to shift, moving slowly as the day unfolds. Here, in the silence, time is not a ticking clock. It is the quiet, sacred rhythm of the earth itself. And we, like those who walked this path before us, are invited to listen to its quiet pulse. The story of the sundial is a story of simplicity and reverence. The ancients did not need the mechanical precision of modern clocks. They understood that time was not something to be conquered or controlled, but something to be felt, to be experienced in its natural unfolding. It was a gift, not a burden, a slow and steady presence that guided their lives in ways that are now hard for us to imagine. Time, for them, was not a series of minutes and hours, but a cycle, a rhythm that echoed through the stones, the sands, and the sky. As we sit in the shade of the temple, the warmth of the sun upon our skin, we are reminded that time is not just a human construct. It is a force that exists far beyond our control, a rhythm that flows through everything, from the movement of the stars to the beating of our hearts. Perhaps in our modern world, we have forgotten how to listen to it, how to feel it in the silence of the earth and the whisper of the wind. Yet here in this ancient place, we are given a glimpse of that quiet knowledge, how the ancients learned to measure time by the slow, inevitable movement of the sun, by the shadows that stretched and shrank, by the rhythm of the earth beneath their feet. And we are reminded, as we sit in this sacred space, that time, in its purest form, is not something to be mastered, but something to be experienced, something to be felt in the quiet spaces between light and dark. The sun continues its journey, moving slowly across the sky, its light now casting deep shadows upon the ruins of the temple. We rise and leave, our steps soft upon the earth, carrying with us the quiet understanding that time is not something to be caught, but something to be experienced in its natural, eternal flow. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, not in the ticking of clocks or the counting of minutes, but in the slow, unfolding rhythm of the sun's light and shadow. Time, like the sun, moves in its own way, quiet, unhurried, and eternal. And as we move through the world, we too move in time, marked not by the sharp edges of a clock, but by the soft, sacred rhythm of the earth and sky. Perhaps some truths are not meant to be understood with our minds, but felt with our hearts, whispers that echo only when we are ready to listen, in the spaces between the light and the dark. Beneath the eternal gaze of the moon, in the stillness of the night, time unfurls like an ancient scroll, It is the moon's slow journey across the sky that whispers to us, calling to us from the depths of millennia. Her soft light, ever patient, ever constant, speaks of cycles long before clocks and calendars, long before we measured moments by the tick of the second hand. The moon, her face pale and ageless, casts her shadow upon the earth, marking the rhythm of existence, silent and undisturbed. Tonight, we find ourselves standing at the threshold of an ancient temple, its stones worn by the touch of countless seasons. The temple has been forgotten by most, its once grand walls now half buried in dust and silence. Yet there is a sacred stillness here, a pulse beneath the stones, as if the earth itself remembers the rituals that once took place under the moon's watchful eye. In the cool night air, the only sound is the soft whisper of the wind through the broken arches. The temple, though crumbled, remains aligned with the heavens, its doors, its walls, its heart, all pointing to the moon. This place was once a sanctuary, a space where the high priests and wise men of old would gather to study the heavens, their eyes tracing the slow arc of the moon as she climbed higher in the sky. They watched as she waxed and waned, as her pale light bathed the world in silvery hues, and with each cycle they learned a deeper truth. It is said that the ancients knew time not by the ticking of clocks, but by the rise and fall of the moon. For the Babylonians, the Maya, and the Egyptians, the moon was not simply a distant body in the sky, but a divine presence that guided the rhythms of their lives. They understood the moon's movements, the silent turning of her phases, to be a profound measure of time. Each cycle, each phase had its purpose, a time to plant, a time to harvest, a time to celebrate, a time to reflect. The lunar calendar, etched in stone and in memory, was a way of harmonizing human life with the eternal dance of the heavens. The moon's cycles became their sacred timekeeping, each new moon marking a beginning, each full moon a culmination. The priests, standing beneath the vast expanse of the night sky, would have whispered their prayers to the moon, offering thanks for the rhythms she bestowed upon them, rhythms that governed their very existence. In this sacred silence, there was no rush, no hurry to be somewhere else. There was only the stillness of time, unfolding gently in the pattern of the moon's light. The Babylonians, with their intricate knowledge of the stars, charted the lunar cycles with a precision that still amazes us today. They studied the way the moon's light shifted across the sky, watching for the subtle changes that marked the turning of seasons. For them, the moon was not just a celestial body, but a messenger from the gods, a guide in both the physical and spiritual realms. The lunar calendar was central to their understanding of time, guiding everything from the sowing of crops to the festivals that honored their gods. In this sacred silence, there was no rush, no hurry to be somewhere else. There was only the stillness of time, unfolding gently in the pattern of the moon's light. Far to the west, in the jungles of the Maya, the moon was similarly revered. To them, the cycles of the moon were as sacred as the sun's rising. They used the moon to mark the passing of days, seasons, and centuries. The Maya believed the moon held the keys to both life and death, and its phases mirrored the cycles of human existence. In the stillness of the night, the moon's light would guide them as they built their pyramids and temples, her steady rhythm the backdrop to their rituals and prayers. The full moon, in particular, was a time of sacred alignment, when the heavens themselves seemed to pause, and the connection between earth and sky became palpable, as if the universe were holding its breath. And in the land of the pharaohs, the Egyptians, who also studied the heavens with reverence, saw in the moon a guiding force. They watched the way the moon's light reflected off the waters of the Nile, casting a silvery glow upon the river's surface. The moon, like the sun, was seen as a divine symbol, representing both life and death, rebirth and renewal. It is said that the Egyptians used the lunar calendar to measure time, guiding everything from agricultural cycles to religious festivals. They built their temples, their pyramids, their entire civilization in alignment with the stars and the moon, believing that their actions on Earth must mirror the sacred rhythms above. As we walk deeper into the temple, the air grows stiller, and the ruins seem to lean closer, as if listening to our every breath. The moon's light spills through the gaps in the stone, casting long shadows upon the broken columns. There is a sense here, beneath the stones, that something timeless remains, a rhythm that echoes through the chambers, a rhythm that does not need to be counted or measured by the tick of a clock. It is a rhythm felt in the body, in the soul, one that stretches back through the ages, to a time when humans lived by the pull of the moon, when the hours of the day were not measured of tasks or obligations, but a measure of moments, of movements, of the earth's eternal turning beneath our feet. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, this way of living in time, this way of measuring the world not in minutes, but in the soft pull of the moon. And yet beneath the silence of the temple, beneath the soft glow of her light, we are reminded that time is not just something to be counted, but something to be felt. As the moon slowly drifts across the sky, her pale face glowing softly in the night, we are left to wonder, what was it like to live in a world where time was not measured by hours and minutes, but by the pull of the moon, by the rhythm of the earth beneath our feet? In the stillness of the temple, the answer is lost to us, as it always has been, waiting patiently in the shadows, waiting for us to listen when we are ready. Perhaps some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Perhaps for now we are meant to drift, like the moon herself, beneath the soft glow of time, no longer bound by the ticking of clocks, but carried on the gentle rhythm of the earth's eternal pulse. On the shores of the ancient world, where the earth kissed the endless sea, there was a time when the ebb and flow of the tides were the only measure of time that mattered. Long before the ticking of clocks or the ringing of bells, the rhythm of the ocean itself held sway over the lives of those who called the water's edge their home. The sea, ancient and vast, marked the hours with its gentle sighs, its waves that rose and fell in an eternal dance, guiding the lives of those who knew how to listen. As the sun sets, bathing the horizon in a warm, golden glow, we find ourselves standing at the edge of a forgotten shore, where the sound of the waves is the only voice that remains. Here, beneath the fading light, the ocean stretches out, endless and eternal. The waves curl in and out, their soft rhythm a sacred hymn that has echoed across time. The scent of salt fills the air, mingling with the coolness of the evening breeze, and for a moment we are suspended between worlds, both ancient and new, both distant and immediate. It is said that the ancients knew the passage of time not by the tick of a clock, but by the rise and fall of the sea. From the shores of Greece to the islands of Polynesia, sailors and fishermen, navigators and priests, all lived their lives in tune with the tides. To them, the ocean was not just a body of water, it was a living, breathing entity that guided them, that spoke to them in the language of waves and currents. They learned to read the sea like an open scroll, understanding the subtle shifts and changes in its rhythm as the moon above cast its silent influence on the waters below. In the quiet stillness of the ancient world, time moved slowly. Like the rising tide, it was a steady pull, neither hurried nor unhurried. There was no need for clocks in such a world, for the ocean itself kept perfect time. The tidal clocks, simple yet profound, were the earliest instruments that measured the passage of hours. These rudimentary devices were crafted from the rhythms of the sea itself, wooden posts driven into the shore, or stones placed with sacred intent, marking the high and low points of the tide. With each wave that lapped against them, the people knew the hour. With each rise and fall of the water, they understood the course of the day, the season, the year. These tidal clocks were not the kind of timepieces we know today. They did not mark the moments with sharp precision, but instead they marked the natural rhythm of life. The moon, distant yet ever present, cast her glow over the ocean, guiding the tides in their unhurried path. And the people, their lives shaped by the sea's pulse, understood time not as a finite, rigid thing, but as a gentle rhythm, one that moved like the water itself, always flowing, always returning. As we journey further into the ancient landscape, the scene shifts, taking us across time and space to the shores of the Aegean Sea. Here, in the cradle of civilization, the Greeks stood in awe of the ocean's power. The sea was a force of nature, both a giver and a taker. Sailors would set their ships adrift, relying not on maps or compasses, but on the subtle shifts in the tides, guided by the moon's eternal rhythm. The rhythm of the tides became their compass, the waves their timekeeper. The gods themselves, they believed, were present in the sea, and the tides were the sacred breath of Poseidon, god of the oceans. In the stillness of the night, we imagine the quiet observance of these sailors standing on the edge of their boats as they gazed out over the water. The moon, pale and full, reflected in the shimmering surface, guiding them toward distant lands. There was no rush in their journey, only the steady pull of the tides, the timeless rhythm that carried them forward. The hours passed not by the tick of a clock, but by the gentle rise of the water, by the movement of the stars above, by the soft breath of the wind. And across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, in the far reaches of Polynesia, the rhythm of the sea guided the islanders in ways both mysterious and sacred. These early navigators, whose ancestors had crossed vast distances in tiny wooden canoes, learned to read the tides like a sacred language. They knew that the ebb and flow of the water held the key to their journeys, that the ocean was both a mirror and a guide. As they sailed, they did not count the hours, but felt the pulse of the sea beneath them. They understood that time, like the ocean, was a constant ebb and flow, an endless cycle that had no beginning and no end. We move deeper into the heart of this world, where the ocean's rhythm becomes both a calendar and a clock. The Polynesians crafted their understanding of time from the sea, building their lives around the lunar cycles and the tides. The moon, ever faithful in her cycle, would rise and fall, her influence stretching out across the ocean like a hand, guiding the water in a steady rhythm. For them, time was not a thing to be measured in minutes or hours, but in the rising and falling of the tides, in the changing of the stars, in the movement of the sea itself. As night falls and the sea laps gently at the shore, we find ourselves in a quiet fishing village. The sky above is starless, yet the moon casts a soft, silvery glow over the village, illuminating the boats and the nets left by the shore. The fishermen, having returned from the sea, sit by their fires, their faces illuminated in the flickering light. Time here is not counted, but felt. It is felt in the cool, salt air that rises from the sea, in the rhythm of the waves that crash softly against the shore. The stars may not be visible tonight, but they are not needed. The ocean has always kept time, and it will continue to do so, long after the last clock is silenced. As we sit with the villagers, watching the fire dance in the night air, we are left with the quiet question: does the ocean itself hold time in its embrace? The answer remains hidden, a secret whispered only to those who are willing to listen to the rhythm of the tides. Perhaps time was never meant to be measured by the ticking of a clock, but by the slow, eternal movement of the ocean, by the rise and fall of the water, by the pull of the moon and the sway of the stars. In the stillness of the night, the ocean continues its ancient dance, its rhythm unchanged by the passage of time. It is said that beneath the surface, in the depths of the sea, time flows like a current, winding and weaving its way through the ages. And perhaps, as we close our eyes and listen to the distant waves, we too are carried along, gently swept into the eternal rhythm of the tides. Perhaps some truths are meant to remain beneath the surface, waiting for us to listen when we are ready. Perhaps the ocean holds more than we can understand, more than we will ever know. For now, we are left in silence, wrapped in the cool embrace of the sea's rhythm, as time moves, timeless and eternal, beneath the moon's watchful gaze. In the stillness of the British Isles, where the land meets the sky in a soft, eternal embrace, a circle of ancient stones rises from the earth. The sun, just past the horizon, spills its golden light across the weathered surface of the rocks, casting long shadows that stretch across the ground. The stones, worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain, stand like silent sentinels, their shapes carved by forces far older than human hands. There is a soft whisper in the air, as if the earth itself is holding its breath, waiting for something, or perhaps remembering something long forgotten. This circle, like others scattered across the ancient world, is not simply a monument to the gods or a place of worship. It is a timekeeper, a sacred instrument designed to not measure hours and minutes, but to track the subtle, unhurried flow of time itself. Each stone, each placement, aligned with celestial precision, marks not only a physical space, but a moment in the eternal passage of the seasons. The sun's slow movement across the sky, the moon's silent phases, these are the timepieces that guided the lives of those who built this place and those who came before them. In the soft glow of dusk, we stand among these stones, and for a moment it is as though the world around us has faded away. The air is cool, the wind gentle, and the only sound is the quiet rustle of the grass beneath our feet. Time, as we know it, seems distant here. There are no clocks, no ticking hands, no sharp demarcations of hours. Here, time unfolds slowly, like the turning of a page in an ancient book, each season marked by the rising and setting of the sun, each year woven into the fabric of the earth. It is said that the ancient peoples who built these stone circles did not live in the rush of minutes and seconds, but in the slow rhythms of nature. They saw the passage of time not as something fixed, but as something that flowed, like the seasons, like the sun and the moon. The stones were not just markers of time, they were keepers of the earth's own rhythm, placed carefully to align with the sun's passage at the solstices and equinoxes, when the earth's tilt creates moments of perfect balance between light and dark. As the light of the setting sun bathes the stones in a warm glow, we move closer to the center of the circle, where the stones stand taller, casting deep shadows that reach across the land. Each one of these stones, though weathered by time, holds within it a secret, a silent witness to the unchanging cycle of life and death, of birth and rebirth. These stones, like the earth beneath them, are part of something far larger than the human lives that once gathered here. They are part of the eternal rhythm of the universe, the pulse of life itself, unbroken by the passage of ages. We imagine the ancient peoples who stood here, their hands raised to the sky as they watched the sun's path shift slowly across the heavens. They did not count the hours, they did not divide their days into rigid segments. Instead, they watched the sun rise and set, marking the passing of days, not by the ticking of a clock, but by the gradual movement of light and shadow. They marked the seasons by the positions of the stars, the sun, and the moon. These cycles, in their slow unfolding, became the true measure of time. The stones were aligned with precision, each one placed to track the solstices and equinoxes. At the solstices, when the sun rises or sets at its most extreme points on the horizon, the stones cast long, sharp shadows, marking the moment of the year when light and darkness stand in perfect balance. On the equinoxes, when day and night are equal, the stones align with the sun's path, a symbol of balance, harmony, and the eternal cycle of life and death. This sacred rhythm was not just a measure of time, it was a reflection of life itself, a life lived not by the rush of clocks, but by the slow, steady pulse of the earth, the sun, and the moon. As we wander through the circle, the stones seem to speak to us in whispers, their ancient voices carried on the wind. There is a deep, unspoken truth in this place, a truth that is not bound by the minutes of the day, but by the slow unfolding of the seasons, the passage of light and shadow, the rise and fall of the sun. The stones seem to echo with this rhythm, their weight and presence reminding us that time, like life, is a flow, not a fixed point. It is a cycle, a spiral, a journey that moves in a circle, always returning, always beginning again. The further we move into the heart of the circle, the more we sense that the stones themselves hold the wisdom of the earth. It is beneath the silence of these ancient rocks that the true nature of time is revealed, not as something to be measured, but something to be experienced. Here, in this sacred space, time is not a force that controls us, but a force that flows through us, a gentle current that carries us from one moment to the next. Each stone is a silent witness to the passage of time, and as we stand in their shadow, we are reminded of our place in this eternal rhythm. There is a sense of peace here, a quiet reverence that fills the air. The wind has stilled, and the only sound is the soft rustle of the leaves in the trees. The sun's light has faded, and the stones are bathed in the pale light of the moon. The world seems to hold its breath, as if waiting for something, but what that something is, we do not know. The stones offer no answers, only their silent presence, standing as they always have, marking the unchanging passage of time. As we stand beneath the moon's pale gaze, we are left with the quiet understanding that time, like the stones, endures beyond the moment. It stretches into eternity, a flow that moves through all things, unbroken, steady, and constant. The stones, in their stillness, hold this truth. They are not just markers of time, they are part of the cycle, part of the rhythm that has been unfolding since the dawn of creation. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the answer to how we measure time. Perhaps it is not something to be understood, but something to be felt, like the slow rhythm of the earth beneath our feet, like the rise and fall of the sun and moon. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and perhaps beneath the silence of the stones, beneath the whisper of the wind, we are finally ready to hear that time, like the stones themselves, is eternal. As the moon rises higher in the sky, casting its light upon the ancient stones, we are left in the stillness, suspended in the quiet rhythm of the earth. Time, as we have known it, slips away, leaving us with the deep, unspoken understanding that time is not something to be measured, but something to be experienced. The stones, the earth, the sky, they are our true timekeepers, and in their silence we find the timeless rhythm of life. In the silence of the night, where the world hums with a quiet pulse, we look up. The sky, vast and infinite, stretches above us, its canvas sprinkled with countless stars, each one a silent witness to time's passing. Far from the cacophony of cities, far from the hum of machines, the ancients lived beneath this celestial dome, tracing the movements of stars, constellations, and planets to measure their days. The stars above were not distant, cold pinpricks in the blackness. They were guides, signposts in the heavens, marking the flow of time. The night is deep, and the air is cool. We find ourselves standing at the edge of an open field beneath the boundless expanse of the stars. Here, in this quiet place, where the earth and sky seem to meet, we are suspended in an ancient moment. The constellations wheel overhead, their slow dance a reminder of the eternal rhythm that governs the universe. In the stillness, it is as if the stars themselves are breathing, their light flickering like a distant heartbeat, telling stories older than memory. It is said that the Egyptians, in the stillness of their desert homeland, looked to the stars to guide their lives. Beneath the vast sky, they built their temples and pyramids in alignment with the heavens, their every movement synchronized with the celestial bodies above. The stars were their clocks, their timekeepers, as they watched the rise and fall of the constellations to mark the changing seasons. They didn't need the ticking of a clock, for the stars were always there, their steady pulse a rhythm to live by. As we stand beneath this same sky, the ancient night speaks to us through the constellations, the familiar shapes of Orion the hunter, and the winding path of the Milky Way stretching across the heavens. The Egyptians knew that the cycle of the stars was intimately tied to the cycles of life, to the rise of the Nile, to the rhythm of planting and harvesting. Each night the sky marked the passage of time, each constellation rising and setting like a chapter in an eternal book. But it wasn't just the Egyptians who listened to the stars. Across the ancient world, from the plains of Mesopotamia to the mountains of China, the stars were used to measure the passage of time. The Babylonians, with their intricate knowledge of the sky, tracked the stars' movements with incredible precision. They watched as the stars rose and fell, marking the hours not with numbers, but with the slow, methodical shifts of the heavens. To them, the stars were not abstract points in the night sky, but living entities, beings that told stories of fate and destiny. In China, the ancient astronomers looked to the stars to guide not only their days, but their very understanding of the universe. The stars were seen as symbols of the cosmic order, their movements a reflection of harmony between the heavens and the earth. The Chinese calendar was built upon the stars, each season tied to the constellations that moved across the sky. They too measured their hours, not with ticking clocks, but with watching the stars rise in their appointed places and fall into darkness again, only to return. We drift slowly through time, from the ancient Egyptians to the Babylonians and beyond, where people watched the same stars we gaze upon tonight. And in this ancient stillness, we realize that time, as they knew it, was not bound by the ticking of seconds or the swing of a pendulum. Time for them was measured in the movements of the stars, slow, deliberate, and eternal. The constellations were not merely markers of the passage of hours, but of the very rhythm of existence itself. Each rise and fall of a star told the story of life, death, and rebirth. The stars were not just timepieces, they were storytellers, reminding the people below that time, like the heavens, is vast and eternal. As the night deepens, we return our gaze to the heavens. The stars above have not changed in their movements, their dance as old as the earth itself. The moon, pale and silent, hangs in the sky, casting a soft light over the earth, as if to remind us that the passage of time is not a force to be controlled, but something to be lived in. We stand beneath this starry vault, feeling the weight of the ages above us, knowing that our place in the universe is just a small moment in the eternal dance of the stars. The air is still, and the night grows quieter. The stars above are constant, unchanging. They have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the birth of civilizations, the quiet moments of personal reflection. And in their stillness, they whisper a secret that we are only now beginning to understand. Time is not a thing to be captured or controlled, but a rhythm to be felt, a pulse to be experienced. Like the stars, time rises and falls, moves in cycles, and yet it is eternal, never truly lost. Perhaps time was never meant to be understood in the way we think. Perhaps it was always meant to be felt, as the ancients felt it, slowly, rhythmically, like the turning of the heavens themselves. Perhaps the stars, in their infinite dance, hold the key to understanding time, not as a ticking clock, but as a flow, a rhythm that moves through all things, living and dying, rising and falling, ever returning. we are left standing beneath the vast dome of the sky, the constellations above us, as timeless and eternal as the cycles they represent. The night holds us in its embrace, and as we drift deeper into the quiet, we feel the presence of the stars, those ancient timekeepers, marking the passage of the seasons, the years, the ages. Time, like the stars, is not something we can touch, but something we can feel, something we can understand only when we let go of the need to measure it and instead allow ourselves to move with its rhythm. Some truths, like the stars, only reveal themselves when we are ready to listen. Perhaps it is not meant to be understood in the way we think, but rather felt in the silence between the stars. Time, like the heavens themselves, is vast, eternal, and mysterious, forever beyond our grasp, but always a part of us, a rhythm we move with, even if we cannot fully touch. And as we look up, we are reminded that we are part of this cosmic dance, a dance that has no beginning and no end. Beneath the soft murmur of the river, time flows like water, steady and constant, moving through the ages with no hurry, no beginning, no end. As the moonlight touches the surface, a gentle ripple disturbs the stillness, and we find ourselves standing at the edge of an ancient river, its waters whispering secrets of ages long past. The current moves slowly, deliberately, as though it holds the weight of time itself, each drop carrying the story of civilizations lost and forgotten. The air is cool, thick with the scent of damp earth and the timeless rhythm of water. As we stand by the riverbank, we can almost hear the faint whispers of the ancients who once stood here, watching the same waters flow by. In their time, the river was not just a source of life, but a measure of it. It was here, by the quiet trickle of the river, that time itself was marked, not with clocks or numbers, but with the natural ebb and flow of water. Time was not something to be counted, but something to be felt, like the steady rhythm of the water beneath our feet. In ancient Mesopotamia, where the first cities rose from the fertile soil between the Tigris and Euphrates, the flow of water became more than just a life-giving force. It became a keeper of time. The Babylonians, the Sumerians, and the Assyrians looked to the rivers and streams not only to nourish their crops, but to mark the passing of the hours. It is said that they devised the earliest water clocks, simple yet profound devices that tracked the flow of water from one container to another. Each drop was a moment, each ripple a measure of time, as the water slowly filled one vessel and emptied into the next. These early water clocks were not like the ticking devices we know today. There were no sharp moments of passing, no harsh divisions between 1 hour and the next. Instead, time unfolded gently, measured in the quiet trickle of water, in the rhythm of its flow. The water clock was not just a tool for measuring time. It was an extension of the earth itself, its pulse in perfect harmony with the flow of the rivers, the rise and fall of the tides, the ebb and the flow of life. As we move further back through time, we find ourselves in ancient China, where the rivers too held the pulse of time. Here, too, the flow of water was used to measure the passing of hours, not with harshness or precision, but with a softness that mirrored the natural world. The Chinese developed water clocks that marked the flow of water from one container to another, and in doing so, they captured the very essence of time, gentle, unhurried, a soft unfolding of moments. These clocks were simple in design, but profound in their meaning. They were not just tools to measure time, they were a reflection of how the ancients understood time itself, not as something to be controlled, but as something to be lived within, like the slow, steady current of the river. We imagine the quiet contemplations of those who first used these timepieces. Beneath the soft rustle of leaves, the steady sound of water trickling, they would watch as the water moved from one container to another, marking the passing of time not in hours or minutes, but in the slow, deliberate rhythm of nature. There was no hurry here, no rush to move on to the next moment. Time was not something to be caught or chased. It was something to be experienced, to be felt in every drop, in every ripple of the water. The flow of the river, like the flow of time, is constant yet ever-changing. The water may appear still, but beneath the surface it moves relentlessly forward, carrying with it the stories of the ages. The ancient civilizations understood this truth. Their water clocks were not just instruments of measurement, they were a way to connect with the eternal flow of life, a way to live in harmony with the natural world. Each moment, like each drop of water, passed gently, flowing into the next with no resistance, no urgency. We stand by the river, listening to the soft murmur of the water as it moves around rocks and through the grasses. The air is cool, the night sky above clear and still, and we feel the weight of time in a way we have never known before. The water, so gentle, so constant, carries time with it. Time not as a rigid force to be reckoned with, but as something that flows, something that moves through us as quietly and steadily as the river itself. The river does not ask us to mark its passing, it simply flows, and in its flowing, it carries us with it, teaching us that time is not something to fear, but something to embrace, something to feel in every drop, in every moment. As the water moves, so too does the feeling of time. It is no longer something distant, something abstract. It is here, in the soft rhythm of the river, in the gentle splash of water against the banks. It is in the quiet breathing of the earth, in the steady rise and fall of the tides, in the calm, unhurried flow of life itself. We are reminded that time, like the water, is not something we can hold or possess. It moves on, unimpeded by our attempts to control it, flowing through us, carrying us with it, just as the river carries its waters to the sea. Perhaps time, like the river, was never meant to be measured. Perhaps it was always meant to be lived, to be felt in the soft pulse of the earth, in the gentle rise and fall of the tide, in the quiet movement of water from one vessel to another. The ancients knew this. They knew that time was not a thing to be captured, but something to be experienced, something to be embraced like the river's flow, and so they lived their lives not by the tick of a clock, but by the rhythm of the earth beneath their feet, by the steady flow of water, by the cycles of the moon and stars. As we stand by the river's edge, the flow of time is all around us. It is in the gentle splash of water, in the soft rustling of leaves, in the distant hum of the earth. The water does not hurry. It moves slowly, deliberately, each drop marking a moment in the passage of time. We are left with the quiet understanding that time, like the water, is not something we measure. It is something we experience, something we feel in every breath, in every drop, in every ripple of the water. It is not bound by clocks, but by the natural world, and in that world, time flows like the river, steady, constant, and ever moving. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, this elusive understanding of time. Perhaps it is not something to be grasped or held, but something to be lived, like the flow of water, like the gentle passing of the seasons. Time, like the river, is both vast and intimate, both eternal and fleeting, and in its flow we are carried along, forever part of its quiet journey. And so we listen to the river's voice as it moves past us, carrying with it the pulse of the earth, the steady rhythm of time. It is in the water that time is truly measured, not by the ticking of clocks, but by the gentle unfolding of life itself. The earth beneath our feet holds a pulse, quiet, steady, eternal. It beats in the stillness of the night, in the rustling of the trees, in the turning of the seasons. Once, long ago, time was not measured by the ticking of clocks or the swift march of minutes, but by the slow, rhythmic pulse of the earth itself. It was a time when life was in tune with the natural world, when every moment was felt not as a passing fragment, but as part of a larger, infinite cycle. Here, in the heart of the earth, time was measured in the way the soil warmed beneath the morning sun, in the bloom of flowers, in the migration of birds, in the quiet unfolding of the seasons. We find ourselves standing at the edge of an ancient garden, bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. The air is thick with the scent of earth and wildflowers, and the sound of a distant river whispers through the trees. The garden stretches before us, a patchwork of vibrant greens and golds, each plant, each leaf, each blossom marking its place in the slow, unfolding dance of time. There are no clocks here, no mechanical instruments to measure the passing of moments. Instead, time is felt in the pulse of the earth, in the steady rise and fall of the seasons, in the soft unfolding of life itself. It is said that the ancients understood time as a cycle, a never-ending loop that connected them to the earth and to each other. Their lives were not divided into hours and minutes, but marked by the slow, sacred movement of the seasons. When the first snowdrops began to bloom in the early spring, they knew it was time to plant. When the heat of summer gave way to the cool winds of autumn, it was time to harvest. These rhythms were as natural as breathing, as inevitable as the turning of the earth beneath them. Beneath the silent sky, we move through a forest where the trees stand like ancient sentinels, their roots deep in the earth, their branches reaching toward the heavens. The forest breathes with the pulse of the earth, its rhythm slow and steady. We hear the rustle of leaves, the soft murmur of a brook, and the occasional call of a bird signaling its migration. Time for the people of this forest was measured not by clocks, but by the movements of the natural world. When the birds took flight toward warmer lands, the people knew it was time to prepare for the coming cold. And when the birds returned, fluttering back with the warmth of spring, it was time to celebrate the return of life. As we stand beneath the canopy of trees, listening to the whispers of the forest, we are reminded of how time was once intimately connected to the rhythms of nature. There were no alarms to wake them, no busy schedules to follow. Their lives unfolded like the seasons, gently guided by the pulse of the earth. They did not need a clock to tell them when to rise or when to sleep, for the sun and the moon, the stars and the tides had already set their own rhythm. Time was not something they fought against or tried to control. It was something they moved with, something they were a part of. In the distance, the horizon glows with the fading light of the day. The land stretches out a sea of golden fields where the crops sway in the breeze. Here, the ancient people of the plains have worked for centuries, planting and harvesting according to the natural rhythms of the earth. Their crops, their food, their very lives were intertwined with the pulse of the land. It was said that the earth itself spoke to them, guiding them in the ways of planting and harvesting, telling them when to sow their seeds and when to gather the fruit of their labor. The seasons were their clock, the earth their calendar. As the sun sinks lower, the air grows cooler, and we are left with the quiet understanding that time, in its truest sense, is not a force to be measured. Time is a heartbeat, a rhythm that lives within us and all around us. It is felt in the way the soil shifts beneath our feet, in the way the river flows, in the steady pulse of the earth. Time, like the cycles of nature, moves in a gentle rhythm, unfolding one moment after another, never rushing, never stopping, but always moving forward, just as the seasons change and the world turns. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, this elusive understanding of time. Perhaps it was never meant to be counted or divided into hours and minutes. Time, in its most sacred form, was always meant to be felt, to be experienced as part of the larger rhythm of the world. It is in the rise of the sun, in the bloom of flowers, in the song of birds that we come to know time. It is in the earth beneath our feet, in the pulse of the seasons, that we come to understand that time, in its most pure and sacred sense, is not something that can be measured, it is something that simply is. As we stand here, beneath the fading light of the day, we are reminded that we are part of this ancient pulse. Our lives, like the plants that grow and the birds that fly, are part of the ever-turning cycle of time. And as the stars begin to appear in the sky above, we are left to ponder the quiet, sacred truth that time, like the heartbeat of the earth, is eternal, flowing through us, guiding us, and carrying us forward with the rhythm of life itself. Perhaps some truths are never meant to be understood, but only felt in the deep, quiet silence of the world. Perhaps time, like the earth, simply moves through us, steady and constant, marking our lives not with the rush of clocks, but with the gentle, unhurried rhythm of the world itself. And as we stand here, in the stillness of the land, we are reminded that time, in its most profound sense, is not something to be controlled, but something to be lived within, like the pulse of the earth, like the flow of the river, like the slow, steady turning of the seasons. Time, like the heartbeat of the earth, moves quietly, and we, in our brief moments, are swept along with it. Perhaps time was always meant to be experienced in this way, in the pulse of the earth beneath our feet, in the cycles of nature, in the gentle unfolding of life. And in this quiet moment, we are left with the peace of knowing that time, like the earth itself, will continue its eternal rhythm long after we are gone, long after the seasons have passed. As the day begins its slow descent, we find ourselves standing at the edge of an ancient temple, its stone walls bathed in the soft golden light of the setting sun. The air is warm, carrying with it the weight of centuries, the silence of forgotten prayers, the breath of a time long past. Before us stands a sundial, worn by the touch of time, its edges smoothed by centuries of the sun's embrace. The shadow it casts is long, stretching across the stone floor in delicate, slow arcs, marking the passage of moments in the only way the ancients knew, through the language of light and shadow. It is said that the people who lived in this sacred place did not measure time by ticking clocks, nor by the sharp divisions of modern hours, but by the rhythms of nature itself. The sun, the moon, and the shadows they cast were their timekeepers. In the quiet corners of ancient temples, in the humble squares of villages, people gathered, their gaze fixed upon the sundial as it measured not just hours, but the unfolding of life itself. Each day, as the sun rose and set, they felt its rhythm, its pulse, echoing in their own hearts. It was a connection to something eternal, something far larger than the fleeting moments of their daily lives. As the evening deepens, we follow the path of these ancients, moving slowly through the remains of a long-forgotten temple. The walls, half crumbled, are still marked by the sacred symbols of the sun and moon, their shapes carved into the stone. The air is heavy with silence, as though the temple itself is holding its breath. And in the quiet, we begin to feel the pull of the natural world, how the sun, once high in the sky, now moves gently toward the horizon, casting a warm golden light across the ruins. The sun's shadow moves steadily, never hurried, a perfect reflection of the passage of time, slow and constant, as it has always been. In this sacred space, time is not measured by the rush of hours, but by the gentle rhythm of the sun's path across the sky. The people who once stood here would have watched, with deep reverence, as the shadow lengthened with the afternoon and as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, leaving the earth in quiet twilight. It is in this rhythm, the gentle rise and fall of light and shadow, that time found its true form, a pulse of the earth, of the heavens, of life itself. No gears or wheels were needed here, only the movement of the sun, the shadow it cast, and the soft glow of the moon that followed. We move further through the temple, and the stones underfoot begin to change, their edges softened by the centuries, their surfaces faded and worn. Yet the moon, too, is a constant here, rising above the crumbling walls as it always has, marking the passage of time in the same way it has for millennia. The ancient people, too, would have watched the moon rise night after night, its pale light illuminating the sacred spaces as they stood in awe, witnessing the same quiet miracle, the rise of the moon at the same time each night, a constant in a world of change. The moon's cycle, its rise and fall, was their timekeeper, a sacred rhythm, one that connected them to the celestial dance above and the earth beneath their feet. In the stillness of the night, beneath the watchful gaze of the stars, we too begin to feel the pull of the moon, its steady rhythm guiding us like an unseen hand. The shadows cast by the moon are soft, gentle, and long, stretching across the earth in the same way the sun's shadow had in the temple. These shadows, though born of light, feel like an echo of something deeper, something more eternal than the passing hours. In the quiet, we are reminded that time, in its most ancient form, is not something to be measured by hands or gears, but something to be felt, like the gentle pull of the moon on the earth, like the way the shadows stretch and shift, marking the passage of moments in the softest, most natural way. We step outside the temple now, into a village square, where people once gathered at the same hour every day to watch the sun's shadow move across the ground. In the center of the square, a simple sundial stands, its shadow still marking the passing of time in the way it always has, with no need for words, no need for numbers. The people of this place, their lives woven into the rhythm of the earth, would have watched the sundial with reverence, knowing that time was not something outside of them, but something that lived in the world around them, in the cycles of the sun, in the turning of the seasons, in the quiet rise of the moon. As we sit beneath the vast open sky, the same sky that the ancients once gazed upon, we are left with the gentle thought that time, in its truest form, is simply the movement of light and shadow. The sun rises and the shadow grows, marking the hours not by numbers, but by the natural rhythm of life. The moon rises, and its light casts long shadows on the earth, marking the cycles of the night, its phases a reflection of the passage of time in its most pure and unhurried form. Perhaps time was never meant to be found in the ticking of clocks, but in the slow, steady rhythm of the sun and moon, in the way the shadows lengthen and fade, in the quiet rise and fall of the celestial bodies. Perhaps it was always meant to be felt, like the pulse of the earth beneath our feet, like the gentle ebb and flow of the tides, like the rise of the sun and the fall of the moon. Time is a heartbeat, not a number, a rhythm that lives not in clocks or machines, but in the soft, eternal dance of light and shadow. And so we sit, beneath the endless sky, listening to the quiet whispers of the night, knowing that we too are part of this eternal rhythm. Time moves not in sharp, divided moments, but in the gentle unfolding of light and shadow, in the rise and fall of the sun and moon, in the pulse of the earth itself. Perhaps in the end, time is not something to be measured, but something to be experienced, something to be felt in every shadow, in every rise and fall, in every quiet breath of the world around us. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Perhaps in this silence we are finally ready to hear the sacred rhythm of time itself. Far from the ticking of mechanical clocks, time in the ancient world was measured by something softer, more sacred. A bell rung in the quiet stillness of a temple, a town square, or a palace would send its sound reverberating through the air, a quiet, constant call, an invitation to pause, to breathe, and to be present. The ancient world, with its ancient rhythms, was never hurried. It was a world marked not by the swift ticking of seconds, but by the slow, sacred ringing of bells that echoed across valleys, through stone temples, and into the hearts of those who paused to listen. We find ourselves standing before the entrance of an ancient temple, its stone walls weathered by centuries of wind and time. The air is thick with the scent of moss and stone, of age-old incense that lingers in the quiet. Above us, high on the temple's tower, a bell hangs, its surface worn smooth by years of use. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ground, the bell rings once, softly, as though it has just awakened from a long, timeless slumber. Its deep, resonant sound ripples through the air, touching the earth and the sky, marking the passage of yet another moment in the eternal dance of time. It is said that in ancient Greece, the toll of the temple bells was not merely a call to mark the hour, but a sacred invitation. The bells rang to announce the passing of moments, to invite the people to step outside of their daily lives and enter into a sacred space of awareness. Each toll was a pause, a gentle reminder to breathe, to listen, to be present. Time was not an abstract concept here. It was felt, experienced in the very sound of the bells that filled the air. In the quiet of this temple, we feel the stillness between the tolls. The bell rings again, its sound long and soft, echoing through the ruins. Beneath the ringing, we can almost hear the whispers of those who once gathered in this place. Priests and devotees, philosophers and sages, standing in quiet reverence, letting the sound of the bell wash over them. They were not counting minutes or hours. They were simply being with the moment, allowing time to flow gently like the water of a quiet stream, marking the moments with every breath, with every sound, with every pause. As we move deeper into the ancient world, we find ourselves in the bell towers of medieval Europe, where the sounds of bells echoed through the streets and halls, calling people to prayer, to reflection, to the present moment. In these bell towers, where the bells hung heavy, each toll was more than a call to mark the hour. It was a sacred invitation. It was said that the bells in these towers were not just there to announce the time, but to remind the people of something greater, something beyond the daily rhythms of life. The bells called them to pause, to breathe, to step into the sacredness of the present, just as the ancient temple bells had done centuries before. As the bells rang, the people in the square below would pause their work, their conversations, their hurried steps, and stand for a moment, listening. The sound of the bell was not a disruption of their lives, it was the heartbeat of their lives, marking a moment that was both fleeting and eternal. In the silence between the tolls, they would find a stillness that allowed them to step outside the rush of time, to reconnect with the sacred pulse of life itself. The bells' tolls echoed across the land, across the fields, the towns, the cities, and as they rang, they carried with them not just the sound of passing time, but the presence of something greater. There was a rhythm to it, like the pulse of the earth itself. Each toll was a reminder that time was not just something to be measured or counted, but something to be experienced, something sacred, something shared between all living things. We return now to the temple, where the bells have fallen silent, their echoes lingering in the air. The moon rises, casting a soft light over the ruins. In the stillness, we are left with the lingering sound of the bells, the faint memory of their tolls, and the gentle, eternal rhythm of time itself. Time here, in the stillness of the night, is not something sharp or measured. It is like the quiet breath of the earth, the gentle unfolding of moments. The sound of the bell, its echo still hanging in the air, is a reminder that time is not separate from us, but something that moves through us, something that we are a part of, just as we are a part of the world around us. And so we sit beneath the stars, listening to the quiet hum of the world, waiting for the next toll, the next invitation to be present, to breathe, to be aware. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, the true measure of time, that is. Perhaps time, in its most sacred form, is simply the movement of sound, the rhythm of life itself, the moments between the tolls, the spaces between the breaths. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and in the quiet of the night, we are finally ready to hear the voice of the bells, calling us to pause, to be present, to feel the sacredness of time that moves not in seconds, but in breath, in sound, in the space between. As we sit beneath the vast sky, we are reminded that time, in its most pure form, is not a measurement, but a feeling. It is the sound of the bells, the quiet rhythm of the earth, the gentle call to be present in every moment. Perhaps in the end, time is simply the heartbeat of the universe, the rhythm of life itself, and we are always, always part of that eternal sound. Beneath the vast, endless sky, where the silence stretches like an infinite breath, time was once measured by something far more primal than clocks. The world was young then, still forming, still breathing in its quiet rhythm. There were no sharp ticks, no precise movements of hands to divide moments. Instead, time was felt in the pulse of the earth beneath the feet, in the movement of the sun across the sky, and in the slow, deliberate marking of each passing day. We find ourselves in a dimly lit chamber, the walls of ancient stone worn smooth by centuries of hands passing over them. In the quiet corners of this sacred space, beneath the faint flicker of torchlight, we see something simple yet profound, a series of notches carved carefully into the wood of a sturdy beam. Each mark, each cut in the wood, is a measure of time, a memory of a day that has passed, a moment that can never be reclaimed, yet forever marked by the quiet act of carving. These marks, made in secrecy, in silence, were not just counting days, they were capturing them, preserving them in the sacred rhythm of life itself. It is said that these marks, these silent counts, were the first calendars of humankind, crafted not by mechanical devices, but by the natural world and the senses. In ancient tribes where no clock could be found, the rhythm of the earth became the measure of time. The notches carved in wood or the scratches made on stone told the story of each passing day. There was no need for precision, no need for minutes or hours. Time was simply the space between breaths, between moments, between the slow, steady passing of the sun from one horizon to the next. Whispers tell us of the Inuit, who long before the world had heard of machines or mechanical timepieces, carved their own forms of time into the bones of animals. These bones, weathered and worn, were etched with tally marks, each one a quiet symbol of the days that passed in the frozen expanse of their world. It was not a way to measure hours or minutes, but to count the days between hunts, the seasons as they changed, and the rhythm of the world that surrounded them. Every mark made in the bone was a quiet acknowledgement of time's passage, a sacred record of survival in a world where every moment was precious, every season a delicate dance of life and death. As the notches carved into the bone were counted, so too were the rhythms of nature understood, the shifting tides, the rising and falling of the moon, and the passing of the northern lights that danced across the sky like celestial fire. There was no clock here. The pulse of time was felt deeply in the body, in the breath, in the very bones of those who lived beneath the great skies of the north. And as each mark was made, it connected them to something eternal, something larger than themselves, time itself in its quiet, rhythmic flow. In the deserts of Egypt, beneath the towering pyramids that touched the heavens, the people of the Nile found their own ways of marking time. Their notches were carved into stone, engraved carefully with symbols of the stars, the moon, and the sun. These markers, placed on the walls of sacred temples and in the chambers of the pharaohs, were not designed to count the minutes, but to track the cycle of the heavens. The Egyptians understood that the passage of time was a sacred rhythm, dictated not by the tick of a clock, but by the rise and fall of the stars, the ebb and flow of the river, and the changing seasons that marked their lives. The sun, their eternal timekeeper, moved steadily across the sky, and the moon marked the passing of each month. In the cool, still silence of the night, they would look to the stars and know that time was passing, not in hurried moments, but in the slow, constant rhythm of the celestial dance. The notches they carved in the stone were an attempt to capture that rhythm, to preserve it in the form of symbols that would last beyond their lifetimes, beyond the years. These symbols became their calendar, their way of tracking not the passage of minutes, but the pulse of the world, the movement of the earth, and the eternal rhythm of life. As we walk through the ruins of these ancient temples, the faint scent of stone and dust fills the air. We can almost hear the quiet whispers of those who once lived here, marking the days with simple, sacred acts, each tally on the stone a gentle reminder that time, in its deepest form, is not something to be controlled or divided, but something to be felt, something to be witnessed in the rise of the sun, the movement of the stars, and the turning of the seasons. In these sacred places, time was not abstract. It was not something that could be divided by clocks or counted by machines. It was something lived, something felt deeply in the breath, in the body, in the cycles of the earth itself. The marks made on wood and stone were not just numbers, but symbols of the sacredness of life, each one a quiet record of the passage of moments that came and went with the unhurried flow of the universe. In the soft, sacred rhythm of the natural world, time was never lost, never hurried. It was simply there, waiting to be noticed, waiting to be felt. Now, in the stillness of the present, we reflect on how we measure time today. The clocks tick, the hands move, and the minutes slip away like water through our fingers. We count the hours, the days, the months, the years, but somewhere, deep within, there remains the echo of those ancient notches, those sacred marks carved into bone, stone, and wood. Perhaps, in some way, we still carry with us the memory of these first calendars, the simple, sacred rhythms of time, measured not by gears, but by breath, by sun, by moon. Perhaps the act of marking time was never meant to be a calculation, but a quiet remembrance. Perhaps, like the ancient peoples who counted the days, we too are meant to feel time, to witness it as it passes, to honor the pulse of the earth beneath our feet, the rhythm of the world around us. And as we walk beneath the sky, beneath the same stars that once guided those who came before us, we are left with the gentle thought that time, in its truest form, is not something to be divided, but something to be experienced in the soft, unhurried moments between breaths, in the silent counting of the days. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, this elusive understanding of time. Perhaps it is something that lives within us, in the marks we make, in the way we move with the rhythm of the earth, in the silence between the moments. And as the moon rises in the sky, marking the passage of another day, we are reminded that time is not a machine, it is a cycle, a heartbeat, a quiet echo of the world, always unfolding, always moving forward, like the marks of an ancient calendar. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and perhaps, in this stillness, we are finally ready to hear them. And so time continued to pass, measured quietly, imperfectly by the movement of light, the drip of water, and the slow turning of the stars. Ancient people never truly controlled time. They simply listened to it. Long before clocks learned to speak in numbers, the world itself did the counting. If your thoughts have drifted, that's exactly as intended. And if you're still awake, there's no need to hurry anywhere. Thank you for spending this peaceful moment with Twilight Tale. Until the next quiet story, may the night remain long and your sleep come easily.